Good morning. Welcome to the UUCC, the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua. We are a group of spiritual free thinkers who gather to celebrate life, build community, and better the world. Wherever you are in your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. I'm Karen Alvarez, your worship associate for this morning, and our service will be read by Reverend Sherry Holiday Kwan. She'll be joining us today by pre-recorded video. Service is also being live streamed to our YouTube channel, and we'll be continuing to worship in a hybrid manner throughout the church year. So you can join us each week here in person, on Zoom, or later on YouTube if you prefer. If this is your first visit, welcome. We invite you to sign the visitor's book in the entryway. And whether it's your first visit or your 100th, we're glad that you came. I have a few announcements to share with you. Please wear a mask. Masks are available for anyone who forgot one. RE and childcare will be provided this morning by Laura Wink and Kaya Mills. We'll be collecting the cards for Joys and Sorrows after our first hymn. Please fill them out or type into the chat box on Zoom if you have something you'd like to share. We do have potluck today, so please stay and join us after the service, whether you brought something or didn't. I know I brought something, so please eat it. We also have a sign-up calendar on the refrigerator now because we're going to go back to coffee hour after non-potluck days. So if you're interested in signing up, if you're involved in a church group and your whole group wants to sign up for a couple of weeks, absolutely put your name on. Are there any other announcements for the good of the community today? Okay. As we prepare to be fully together, I remind you to silence your phones and devices. We now enter a space of worship. I invite you to join with me in our chalice lighting words as the flame is lit. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together.
Thank you for the welcome to Canandaigua. I'm the Reverend Sherry Halliday Kwan. I'm the lead minister at First Unitarian Church of Rochester. We're your neighbors just a little bit north. Though, quite frankly, I'm in California right now, where I've recently traveled. I'll be back in our area really soon. But of course, I'm not the only one that travels. I want to share with you a story from Dr. Patricia Wright that I heard her tell in Rochester recently. Now, Dr. Wright, she's an American conservationist, but she spent most of her life in Madagascar, where she's worked with local scholars there, as well as American research institutions like zoos, to help investigate and celebrate the biodiversity of that place, and to learn more about the creatures and ecosystems that live there. So she works a lot with animals and lemurs in particular. There's a particular kind of lemur called an eye, and it's nocturnal, and so there's not a lot known about it. And so she's transported a few of these back to the States for research purposes. Now, what you should know about an eye is they're bug-eyed, and their tongues are pretty much out all the time. And again, they're nocturnal. If you YouTube search for them, eyes, harbingers of death is one of the first results you'll get. So they get a tough rap, but you know, they're small. Somebody loves them. And she was trying to bring a pair back to the States, and on her layover in Brussels, she found that she was stopped by a young customs agent who wanted to know what she had in her cat carrier. In a combination of English and French, she said basically cats. But it was clear to this clerk, who had caught just a tiny glimpse, that these were no cats. Not French cats, not Belgian cats, not English cats, not American cats, certainly not cats from Madagascar. And they went back and forth on this for a while. But eventually, the clerk insisted that he get to take a look at what was in the cat carrier. And so Dr. Wright agreed. And she showed the clerk these bug-eyed, tongue-out, nocturnal harbingers of death, the eyes. To which he replied, "Oh, well, these are eyes. Why didn't you just say so?" Dr. Wright explained that she didn't think he would know what they were, but he pulled from under the counter a National Geographic with a special on eyes and talked about how excited he was, and merrily she went on her way. And I think this is why we come to church. We come because all of us carry something with us, whatever our baggage is, that can sometimes feel like a logistical hurdle, even if it's something that we truly love. Maybe our children, maybe our background or experience, where we came from, the diagnosis we just received, whatever it is that we come carrying, whoever we are as we come into this place. Someone else sees us as a blessing and a miracle, a delightful surprise that they have been hoping to meet their whole lives. And if only we're able to share with each other in small glances, as well as times where it feels a little bit scarier, well, this is what it means to be a church together. It is so good to worship with all of you this morning. Thank you for having me.
Our first hymn this morning is number 6 in the grade hymnal, "Just as Long as I Have Breath." Please rise as you're willing and able and join us to sing. Just as long as
We are a community that holds one another in our celebrations and in our pain. We welcome you to share your joys and sorrows by writing them down on the card you found on your chair and placing it in the basket when it comes by you, or typing it into the chat box in Zoom. Know that whatever your heart is holding today, whether shared or not, we are with you. Now is the time in our service to join together in the spiritual practice of generosity. Our gifts of both time and money support our church in its work. Each week, we'd like to spotlight a group or committee and thank them for their gifts of time. This week, the group is the Board of Trustees. The board meets on the second Wednesday every month and talks about matters concerning kind of the behind the scenes operation of the church. These are open meetings. And if you'd like additional information, you can contact me, Brandon Steele, Laura Wink, Gigi Horwood Benson, or Pat Mills, and of course, Eileen. 1/4 of our plate collection for the darkness season goes to Light Hill, an organization that provides loving, compassionate, specialized care for those who are terminally ill and for their families and loved ones. You can give to this morning's offering by placing cash or a check into the basket, or if you're joining us from home, by visiting canandaiguauu.org/connections/donate, or mailing a check to UUCC at 3024 Cooley Road, Canandaigua, New York, 14424. In any case, make a note that your gift is intended for today's offering. We now gratefully accept the offering.
So our story today is one that you may have heard before, or at least have heard of before, and it comes from Jewish and Christian teaching, and it's the story of David and Goliath. So Goliath was a Philistine, an invader who was in charge, but also happened to be physically huge, really intimidating, just massive, and had fought again and again and always been victorious previously. He'd come to fight again. And he said, instead of, and actually this was a pretty good move, because instead of mass death of battles between armies, he proposed, why don't I just fight your best fighter, 1-to-1? A life-saving move by the enemy or villain in this story, to be sure. But Goliath says, send me your best fighter. And all the fighters, well, they were afraid appropriately so. Goliath was massive. And the person selected was not the person you would expect, not the fastest, probably not the smartest, definitely not the biggest, not the strongest, not the person you would expect to be placed up against the biggest fighter. And in fact, Goliath thought maybe it was a joke at first when young David was sent out. So skinny, scrawny, young. Had he killed anyone before? This was going to be a quick battle, he assumed. And in fact, David had his doubts signing up for this. Initially, he'd been given armor, but realized that it was so heavy for his body, he had no chance in this battle if he wore it. And so he stripped off the armor and walked into battle with 5 stones, 5 rocks and a slingshot, or so the tradition goes. And with these 5 stones and his slingshot, not fighting harder, but maybe a little smarter, he hit Goliath in the forehead with these stones and won the battle. Many lives were saved that day. And David went on to become a king, one really important in Jewish and Christian stories. And this story and those 5 stones, well, they've become the basis for lots of ways Jewish and Christian and Unitarian Universalists talk about what it is that we bring into the world. What are the tools that we have available to us? I don't know if you were going into battle, what you would bring with you right now. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about what Unitarian Universalism has to say about this later.
Today, for joys and sorrows, we're sending healing wishes to Lynn Cronus's father-in-law, and a big joy for Letchworth Park, a hike in Letchworth Park yesterday, learning about the insects that are still active in the winter. I don't have the stones and the water today, but we're gonna just imagine that we're dropping that in for all the joys and sorrows that are left in the silence of our hearts. Where whatever is in your heart today, we are with you. At this time, if there's any children who would like childcare, please go downstairs with Laura and Kaya.
Please join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation. I'll hold out my hands. It's been a while since I've been able to do this, reaching out to all of you. And wherever you are, I ask that you reach out to me or to those closest to you. Spirit of life, God of many names, no name at all, and one abundant love, source of endings and beginnings. We find ourselves here at the start of a new year and the close of our darkness season, torn between the tumult of the next thing and the temptation or invitation to rest just a little while longer. Help us to find our grounding. Help us to breathe in the new possibility of this year, knowing that we bring ourselves all of the baggage, all of the experience, all that we were before into this present moment. and yet each day offers itself to us anew. May we hold ourselves gently. May we know ourselves bug-eyed, tongue out, dealing out mistakes, waking in the night, however it is that we come, and know ourselves to be different than expected. May we know ourselves to be loved, to bring enough here, and to gently ease and relax and find a new way of moving forward. In this spirit of prayer and meditation, we lift up in love all those who are struggling with grief, with loneliness, or addiction. We lift up in love all those wrestling with illness of mind or body. I invite you to speak the name of a beloved here into this space, in your heart or out loud, that you would like to hold in love. May those named here know themselves to be held in this web of love. Spirit of life, help us to be thankful for this day. Help us to see the blessings and miracles of life as they unfold. And help us to seize whatever opportunities for kindness or tenderness or grace life offers us. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be. A couple months ago,
we pushed it around to get better timing with the video, but when this was,
a couple months ago, I was sitting in a new member class with some new members of my congregation now, though at the time they were still exploring whether or not Unitarian Universalism and our church, our community, was right for them. We do an exercise in that class, and well, actually, Reverend Eileen might have been the one to introduce it to us. I'm not sure. But basically, we have a spectrum of belief. So we lay out two theological statements and we ask people to place themselves in relationship to one side or the other. So, I like orange or I like blue. But the questions are things like, I believe people are good. I believe people are flawed. Now, as you might have guessed, some of these are tricky. Of course, we have a plurality of beliefs, but also many of them are things that I personally believe at the same time. How can we know which? And yet it's a forced choice exercise. It forces us to think and to place ourselves and to talk about it with others who may have placed themselves in similar positions or elsewhere. The very idea is that in Unitarian Universalism, the diverse collection of ways and thoughts that we bring together are not simply accepted, but cherished. Our theological diversity is not simply about finding the lowest common denominator, but our highest common ground. How might we learn to be with each other? How might we learn from each other? It's not enough to say you and I think differently and we're good, let's not talk about it. But you and I think differently, and that is a miracle, or at least an opportunity. So let's talk about it. A question came up in that spectrum exercise. I believe in miracles. I believe life follows an order that can be described by science, or something similar. I forget exactly what the duality was, but one of the people who chose that they wanted to proclaim something about miracles, well, when asked about it, they said, this is hard for me because, of course I don't believe everything I read. I don't believe everything we use symbolically in stories. Did David actually take a bunch of rocks and sling it towards Goliath? Is that a historical fact that determines how we should act? Yeah, probably not. But, I do think my children are miracles. There's something magical about them. And you could feel this ripple go through the room. The couple sitting next to this man said, both of them, they sort of gasped and said, well, if your kids are miracles, ours are probably miracles too. And they chuckled, and one said, well, one's kind of being a jerk, but, they're still miraculous. And across the room, you could hear someone else, they didn't say, well, Tommy's a good eater, or so-and-so gets a great report card, or so-and-so is actually a lot nicer than your kid. There wasn't anything like that, but there was certainly this, well, if your kid's a miracle, even when they're at their most flawed or most broken, well, my kids are miracles too. The ripple through the room had a magical effect. And I don't know that everyone left that room saying, yeah, I believe in miracles, but I do know that everyone left that room having heard what someone else had to say and let it into their heart a little bit, turned it over, thought about whether it fit for them or how it applied. And, well, it was good to be together on that evening. There was a twinkle about hearing what miracles meant in one another's life. And we don't subject any of us to a test of belief. There's no creed that you have to sign on to, no thing you have to say in order to be a Unitarian Universalist, but to participate with openness and full-heartedness, to be willing to change, to stumble and journey and wrestle together. Well, that is what it means to be a Unitarian Universalist. Right now, our faith, our larger tradition, our movement, the Unitarian Universalist Association, is in a conversation about what are the things we say that are at the core of our faith. Our 7 principles have recently become 8 for many, for our congregation, following the lead of our children. and the Article 2 Commission, which is to say the people who took a look at the bylaws of the Unitarian Universalist Association and were charged with the task of revising them, incorporating more contemporary ideas so that they might fit Unitarian Universalism as we are now and as we hope to be in the future more snugly than our 30-year-old garment of the 7 principles did. Well, they're also trying to cast a vision or find the right words for who we are. What is the way we're going to talk about it? Again, not a creed, but certainly something that helps explain a little bit about who we are beyond these are the songs we like, or this is how we like to dress in this particular place, something that connects your congregation with ours, as well as the 1,000 others across North America. How are we in relationship? That is to say, how do we covenant together is a core practice of ours. But again, the words we say in our principles and sources and other statements, they're not creeds. They don't tell us everything about who we are. And so much so that though the 7 or 8 principles are important to many of us, they're not the only way Unitarian Universalists right now use to explain and articulate what we're all about. Unitarian theologian and then Unitarian Universalist theologian James Luther Adams, he talked about the 5 smooth stones of liberal religion. He talked about the 5 smooth stones of Unitarian Universalism, a symbology that he took directly from David. And then sometime in recent decades, this was recast, made anew and more fitting for who we are and how we ought to be or want to be right now. And recognizing that, quite frankly, there wasn't a lot of smoothness always in Unitarian Universalism, that we could be a little messy, a little jagged, always trying to figure it out. We started talking about the 5 jagged rocks. And don't worry, I'm not going to test you. I want you to know that there are 5 jagged rocks of Unitarian Universalism, ways of talking about the things that connect us. And there are people in this faith who have been here for decades or all their lives who maybe haven't heard of these before. And that's okay. There are those for whom this is the central part of Unitarian Universalism. For some, it may be the chalice lighting. For some, it may be our principles. For some, it may be singing Spirit of Life. Or for some, it may be Bill playing at the piano. Unitarian Universalism moves and churns through many paths, but we are one mighty river. And so the 5 jagged rocks of Unitarian Universalism, well, I'm going to go through them somewhat quickly, and I'll spend a little bit more time on the 5th as we spend a little bit more time together, you and me. So, number 1, there is a unity that makes us one. We are all connected, in other words. There's something that unites us in purpose or in existence, that on a fundamental atomic nuclear level, we are one. Number 2, all souls are sacred and worthy. This connects to our first principle. It talks about the inherent goodness, the inherent worth of all of us, something that cannot be given or taken away. Number 3, courageous love transforms the world. Here we find our unified purpose, what it means to live and act in the world. Number 4, truth continues to be revealed. None of us has a monopoly on the truth, and we cannot know now everything there is to know moving forward, cannot know everything there has been to know. We are in a process of ongoing revelation. And finally, number 5, salvation in this life. Unitarian Universalism, again, makes no claim on the next life or past lives as a whole. Individually or collectively, many of us may have thoughts or speak to the next or the past lives, but Salvation, that is to say, a word that for many of us feels a little bit strange, but for others speaks to a deep longing within us. Salvation in this life is our collective focus. We seek salvation, that is to say, we seek what can be healed or repaired or saved or exalted here, between birth and death, on this mortal plane. This is our focus and where we direct our attention here in this religious community. In the context of Christian hegemony, where salvation in the next life may be the focus, our collective work, what we attend to as Unitarian Universalists, is in the here and the now. And so I want to talk a little bit about one Unitarian Universalist bona fide miracle, something that speaks to how we work towards a better world, towards a world that has repair and healing and saving of ourselves and others right here and right now. And well, you might know that in Unitarian Universalism, some of us, it's a cultural quirk, not a theological claim, some of us really like to replace things with one U with two U's. So instead of fun, we have foon. Or instead of well, this isn't replacing a U, but it's just an opportunity to put in not a W, but a U and a U, right? So recently we had a show at First Unitarian with sacred ink, and it was a tattoo show. It's cheesy, and I love it, and I like to do it a lot, and I encourage you to do it, even though lots of people hate it. But you is a bona fide Unitarian Universalist miracle. In the last 20 years, our research into HIV and AIDS has rendered undetectable viral loads as untransmittable HIV. Undetectable equals untransmissible. So antiretrovirals and pre-exposure as well as post-exposure prophylaxis, that is to say medications that prevent the transmission of HIV and medication that prevents the viral load from developing into HIV at a moment when there is potentially infection, that is to say PrEP and PEP, pre and post exposure prophylaxis, are Unitarian Universalist miracles. Yes, this may be in the vein of your children or my children or somebody else's children being miracles, things that maybe we could take for granted or have a perfectly explainable scientific origin, one that we even teach in OWL classes, our comprehensive sexuality education, and yet makes life better, more magical, more vibrant than it otherwise would be. A life-altering and for many decades life-ending disease has been through treatment and management, detection and accessibility of these treatments, been rendered something that can be lived with for decades, for the rest of one's natural life. Undetectable, that is to say, undetectable viral loads become untransmissible HIV. An undetectable viral load means you cannot transmit HIV. 40 million people on this planet currently have HIV, and 40 million people have died of AIDS-related illnesses over the last 40 years. But we have made incredible progress in the prevention and treatment of HIV. And this dramatic shift has meant that 85% of the people in the world are receiving antiretroviral therapy. So 15% are not. There's still work to be done, but 85% are. And that has meant that a life-denying disease has been rendered, if not totally neutralized, well managed. It takes the Unitarian streak within us that invites us, commands us, bids us to seek further knowledge, to shape human endeavor towards salvation, that drives reason and cooperation in scientific research to create powerful treatment for life-altering treatment. Well, that joins with our universalist tendency and commitment within us to seek broad and widespread and indeed universal salvation. You equals you. Well, it's a modern miracle. And 40 years ago, when a generation of gay men in this country knew all too well that not being spoken about or talked about in churches or hospitals meant that a burden was being silently carried by a small but mighty community. In those 40 years since, science has moved us to a place where what was once marginalized can now be managed and treated. And Unitarian Universalist theology, it invites us and it asks us to witness to a world where miracles are possible, where what was once life-denying can now be saved, or what was once life-altering can now be repaired, where healing is possible, but not guaranteed, where healing is possible, but needs to be proclaimed. We need to proclaim goodness wherever we find it. And whether that's using the weird you trick when a single you would do, or witnessing to a world where goodness is possible and available, but threatened, well, this is what it means to turn our attention to salvation in this life. Now, I name this right now because it's interesting and cool, and many people don't know that undetectable equals untransmissible, and how important that is, how important the advocacy of gay men and the larger queer community and so many others, and the work of science and public health workers over the last 40 years has shifted what HIV looks like, but also because right now it is under attack. In Florida and Oklahoma and in other places, access to pre-exposure prophylaxis has been threatened. Health insurance no longer needing to cover this life-saving medication through religious exemptions means that this life-saving treatment is no longer universally available. Our faith asks us to proclaim a holy no to that which is death-dealing. Our faith asks us to proclaim a holy no to that which denies the humanity of all. Ours is a faith that asks us to proclaim a holy yes to that which can be repaired, to that which can be healed, to that which can be saved. Here in the United States, here in the Greater Finger Lakes area, here in Canandaigua or Rochester or California, wherever it is that we are. May we as newcomers or old timers proclaim the goodness of what science and the world might bring us, to proclaim the goodness of life-saving technology wherever it is to be found, to proclaim the goodness of your children as well as mine, and to witness and to say, yes, this truly is a miracle. And if your children are a miracle, so are mine, and so are those over there. And so go out into the world, proclaiming the holy, making room for one another, and finding miracles wherever you may go. Amen and blessed. My friends, go out into
Why I'm waking up to find my world between the dying and being reborn. I see what is and I see what could be. Can't close my eyes again and go back to sleep. change our course. Just a lonely voice. Wish I could lose myself in all the noise. What if we all would rise, a generation proud, with a mighty song, we could turn this world around. Fill my days with blessed unrest, and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide. Fill my days with blessed unrest, and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide. Ancestors all behind, and before me every child, I bring the power of a long unbroken line. When our time is through, I want to know we did what we came to do for the future ones. So in our darkest days, may we all be strong and give our lives so light they go on. Fill my days with blessed unrest, and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide. Fill my days with blessed unrest, and my nights with dreams of justice. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide. Make me a vessel for the turning of the tide.
My friends, go out into the world. Go knowing that you are loved, that you are held in the palm of creation. Go witnessing, finding miracles and the holy wherever it is that you may be. May you encounter the goodness in another's child. May you say a holy yes to the presence of all that is sacred. Welcome to the world, babies. Amen, and blessed be. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the welcome.
Our closing hymn this morning is number 318, We Would Be One. Please rise as you're willing and able and join us to sing.
Please join us in our words for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.